Hi there, my name is Stephen Hamill. I'm Director of Design and Innovation at MBS, and our presentation today will be on the MBS BIM Toolkit. Firstly, we're going to hear from Professor Dave Philp from BIM Task Group on the Level 2 BIM journey so far. Then I'll present the Digital Plan of Work tool myself, and then hand over to Professor Steve Lockley from BIM Academy to talk about verification. So, straight into it, over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm David Philp. I'm part of the UK BIM Task Group. You heard me speak this morning. We said, this is a key day for us, in terms of this thing called Level 2, the BIM journey, and the journey towards for us June of this year, where we create this wraparound about it. And we said there was two key components for us that, that were still missing out there: the digital plan of works and the unifying core classification system that can help bring these together. It's been a key ambition of these, since the start of, what Level 2 looks like, especially trying to build capability within the supply chain. We talked about BIM Show Live this morning, in terms of where we started, in terms of, the what and the why. And you go back to 2011, there was no Level 2 BIM projects there. You look in terms of where we are today, we mentioned the size of the BIM pipeline, over £10 billion in jobs, but again, the big thing is, our processes, our tools and the guides are the thing that's making us stand out. So today, we're really proud to be here, and actually start to showcase the great work that's been done by Ariba Enterprises MBS. It's a key day. It's a project that's been funded by Innovate UK in terms of getting this to the marketplace. There's been a lot of hard work went into it, and I think again it's a great example of a collaborative project. There's been a huge amount of people involved throughout industry, so we're really glad to be out here today to promote it. And for us as a task group, many of you saw this map in terms of our journey plan, but I don't know if you can see that bit that's in the middle of the document. It went back to 2013 when the BIM task group in the lab space put out the need for this thing called a digital plan of work, and to start to think about assemblies as well. How many folk have read it? It was about 90 pages. I think if it was actually, you guys read it? Okay, it's good to see that. But actually, it was really good. I mean, it looked at many things. I think one of the things, it looked at data hierarchies as well. And I always remember a test model for it was a cheese sandwich. Something as simple as that. And it looked at all the various assemblies that actually goes in terms of covering, lubricants and fillings and such like. And actually, how we have to start to think about describe these things. But so it's been, for us, it's been a key ambition to actually make this work for the last couple of years. Well, why? I think in terms of, you hear from our clients all the time, it's a bit like, pictionary at times, trying to describe things. In fact, you'll probably hear it in this presentation. You've got a Scotsman, a Geordie, and Stephen's proper English. We all struggle to describe things in terms of both geometry and non-graphical data, and I think that's a key thing for us. We really need to have a way of describing and naming things. It's really key in terms of we do that. We always have that one as well. You hear the term more and more, what we've heard about in plain language questions. Start to think about digital queries as well. We have to start to think, we've got to get a way of describing things that can start to answer our queries a lot better as well. We need to take, if you like, some of that, if you like, the grey fuzziness out of what we're doing. So we have to have very clear ways of naming things and describing things. And you'll hear the term more and more now. In fact, has somebody heard of it? Level of definition? How many folk have heard of the term? Yeah, I've got a full house almost in that one. I don't know if there's doing BIM bingo, but I think there's a house in that one. But it's a rich amalgam of two things. So you hear about it off the guys and in a bit more detail. But we need to describe both geometry, our level of detail, and the level of information on graphical as that goes. Again, and that's how they tie to a plain language question. What information you need to answer a question. The other thing, we heard about it this morning as well, this thing called COBie can actually be quite hard. And we said, something that can sit above and make it very simple, especially from the client that's describing information needs, roles, responsibilities. So it comes, if we start to create these simple tools, it comes a great way for us to both create capacity in the supply chain, but also during the early project stages as well, the stages of 0, 1, 2, to start to prescribe things a lot easier from that client point of view as well. And that's a key ambition that was set out in the functionality brief in terms of doing things. So level of definition and answering plain language questions, really quite key. And you can see there, even if you take something that, I'm sure you've all done it as, say kids, I'm sure some folk like me still play with it today, in terms of Lego. I think it's a great example. You've got things like the big Duplo blocks. I've got a very sort of, very basic in terms of geometrical sort of description, but again, You can go all the way through to these now Technic blocks that have got the high level of detail within them. But again, your level of information for that, you know, it can change as you go right way through there. But the BIM task group, you know, we started to actually necessitate, we wanted clarity in terms of the data sets that offer three things. We wanted to be able to define the data a bit better. We also wanted a way of testing it and start to think about really key, and we do measure this, the value. How do we start to become more efficient in the use of this? And the digital plan of work was very much there to support that level 2 process, especially from the client and the supply chain point of view. And you can see there the complexity of actually how we take, you know, so it's really key that everybody can understand what's being supplied, the right amount of information. You can see there we move right the way through, there's no laser in this, but we move right the way back, you know, we call it TRM, but maybe manufacturing community, handing up to somebody that's maybe putting an assembly together, think of our cheese sandwich, building the sandwich sort of thing. We then, you know, maybe hand over to a lead designer or a main contractor. It's really important that we don't have the waste with it there. We can describe the data and have a way of effectively managing it in a way that, you know, everybody can play. And that's why COBie has been a key part of it, but also the need now to actually start to think about both the core classification systems and the way of describing consistently the amount of geometry and non-graphical data that's in there. It's also been really key in terms of what we're doing. So we've got to think about that coordinated data set. And I think the big thing about BIM, you know, we talk about, and it's key, is that thing called information growth. So, you know, as a project, you can see the red line there. So as the project's progressing, the data is progressively growing, but it's constantly aligned to a need or a plain language question. So we've got data grow both geometrically and non-graphically. And I always think something of the best analogy is the world of, I take it, has everybody got a washing machine in here at some point or been involved in the purchase of a washing machine? Excellent, so we've got about half the audience that's procured washing machines, but you think about the information needs with there, you find most of the information needs are non-graphical in nature. It's maybe warranty data, cost data, and there's maybe only one bit of geometrical data. Does it fit within my volume space? So that's a good example of maybe your plain language question is answered by something that has got low level of detail, but maybe high level of information. So it's what information is appropriate to a capital delivery phase drop. So you can see the drops there. And we use our data, we want to describe it to answer a plain language question, either through COBie or a 2D PDF. So data growth and be able to describe that amount of data is really, really important. Because the big part, if we don't get it right, we end up with too much waste in it. And this is a key concept in terms of the digital plan of work. Right amount of information at the right time. It's a bit like the Goldilocks enigma we've got. It needs to be just right. You know, I think we're in danger often of trying to, especially in terms of all the BIM, to put too much information in the model right at the beginning. We start to limit maybe optioneering and such like. So getting the right amount of information at the right time by all members of the supply chain is really, really important. So it's a key thing, you know, by doing this for us, it means we get the right amount of information prescribed, we can test it and validate right the way through in terms of what we're doing. So a bit of a very quick overview in terms of, you know, from the BIM task group, you know, we're delighted in terms of the progress that's been made, and obviously want to thank, you know, both NBS and indeed Innovate UK for us doing it. And we're on a journey, you know, this very much today. We hear from both Steve and Stephen, you know, today is very much a soft launch, you know, as we head towards June in terms of closing the whole level 2 package out, but it's a significant step in terms of our journey. So well done guys, and we'll hear a bit more in detail.
Yeah, hi. Just to talk a little bit more about the team, thanks to BIM Task Group in terms of being the sort of client that kicked this project off, and also thanks to Innovate UK, who've been the funding body over the last 6 months. In terms of the core team that's developed the toolkit over the 6 months, on the sort of construction industry side, we've got BDP, multidisciplinary building design, Mott MacDonald on multidisciplinary infrastructure design, Lang O'Rourke, design management, construction, build off-site, and then more on the technology side, we have BIM Academy with us today in terms of open data technology, and also Microsoft Newcastle University in terms of cloud capabilities. And right from the first month of this project, we've been delighted to have the support of some of the major construction institutions. So once a month we've met with representatives from these institutions that have steered the direction of the project. Rick's in particular came onto the core team and did work with us on the classification as well. So what I'm going to do for the next half an hour or so is talk about the BIM toolkit, but specifically how it fits into the PAS 1192 processes. So just looking at the front of the diagram from PAS 1192 Part 2, credit Mervyn Richards, you'll see this sort of circular diagram that looks at the construction process, starting in the strategy stage, assessment and need, moving through to procurement when you're bringing consultants on board, pre-contract, then post-contract, going through the production stages, so all of the design and the construction, and then ultimately coming back into the sort of asset management and using that digital data to manage the asset. And we're going to look at maybe a few of these stages step by step. So initially, let's look at that assessment and need stage as defined in PAS 1192 Part 2. So this is the stage where the client's looking at their existing assets and determining when they're starting off on the next project, what are the plain language questions that they want to answer with digital information. So in addition to procuring a physical asset, also procuring digital information. And so think of those plain language questions, what tasks, what deliverables are required, and aligning them to the particular project stages. And then that being part of that overall tender documentation. So a few bullet points there, but how does that actually look inside the BIM toolkit? So this is the website. It's a free website. You just need to log on with the MBS username and password. And once you're into your area, you can see the projects that you're working on. So in this example here, I've got 5 projects. And I open a particular project. Let's quickly look at the data structure behind a project. At the sort of top level project level, you have properties, such as the project reference, the title, maybe an image, its location, a classification of what type of project it is. And then moving down to the level below that, there's also properties aligned to each stage. So at the moment here, we're looking at stage 0, the strategy stage, and you can see that you've got standardized properties. So at this stage, what is the construction budget? What's the expected start time? Are there any environmental assessment targets that you're going for? So key properties, which will change as you go through the project, as you go from stages 0 through the design, through the construction. And then at each stage, so moving along these tabs, you have roles as well. So right before the project starts, deciding which roles are required at each stage of the project. So at stage 1, do you need a civil engineer? At stage 5, do you need a contract administrator? And putting in those roles of what's required at what stage of a project. The sort of thing that maybe a lot of organisations do already at the start of a project, but in a standardised data structure that's on the cloud. Then you move along to the next tab. So we've moved along from roles, and what we've got here is tasks. So when people think of BIM, quite often people straight away think of the 3D model. But it's not just about the 3D model, it's also about all of the other requirements, which are sometimes PowerPoint presentations, photographs, documents, and they're all digital bits of information that you want to receive at particular stages. So there might be a particular task, prepare the feasibility study, or prepare the building control submission, etc. Having those aligned to each stage and against the expected project role. And what we're doing for launch is giving a number of template sets of tasks. So for those of you working on building projects, we've got tasks based on the schedule of services from the RIBA Plan of Work 2013. We also have a version of that with the CIC schedule of services terminologies, so architectural design instead of architect, civil engineering design instead of civil engineer as a role. And we have tasks that we've worked together with Environment Agency and also Highways England in terms of looking at the wider infrastructure and not just focusing on buildings. And you can take those template tasks and get them right for your organisation. So if you're a professional client that does lots of, say, buildings or projects of the same type, you can look at these template tasks, but then maybe remove 20% and add 20% and get them right for your organisation. So what you can see here is there's a little button, you can add a task, you can edit it, you can remove it. In this particular task I'm putting down for stage 1, and it says consult with local community groups. There's a little bit of a description and a hyperlink, and I've assigned that against the project lead. Remember, this is still at the strategy or at the brief stage, so we don't know who the project lead's going to be yet, we don't know who the engineer's going to be, but we're focusing on getting those information requirements correct in the cloud in a standardized format. And what you can do with this information once you've set it up is reuse it again on future projects and continually improve. So when you start the next project, you can start from the tasks provided by MBS, or you can pick from a previous project, or you can even browse to maybe a data file that you can import. So maybe a private client's got an extranet site where they don't want to share with the whole world what their standard tasks and deliverables are. They can have that little digital data file that you can use as the seed to start the project when you employ consultants. So that's a use template dialog from Create New Project. And what's really important here is this is pre-contract stage, so the tasks and deliverables aren't against a particular organisation. But what you can do is export this information out of the toolkit. The toolkit's not trying to be a sort of bucket where all the information comes in and you can never get it out. What's been key to this project is open APIs and export functionality, working with open data formats with the BIM Academy, so that this information can be exported. And we're wanting to take the whole industry with us here, and not just the 1 or 2% that are sort of BIM experts. So the first format you can export it to is just a nice, friendly Microsoft Office. So take it to Microsoft Excel, and then copy and paste it into an employer's information requirement document, and PDF it. And that's your record, just like your PDF drawings from a design model, and that can go into the common data environment and be a record of the employer's information requirements that have been issued out of the office at that time. In addition to that, you can export it into open data format, which is a language that computer software can read. So we're talking to lots of software companies at the moment about how you can take this information and push it from our system into other systems. So I imagine 99% of the industry's interested in the top one at the moment, using well-structured information to create a standardized PDF. But more and more people are interested in working in that digital, well-structured information as well. Here's a little example of the top example. It's all been exported into a nice, friendly Microsoft Excel format. You can manipulate, and you can drop that straight into an employee's information requirements document. It's a fantastic template on the BIM Task Group website. I think it goes in section 1.4, which are your specific information requirements at those stages. So let's move around that project lifecycle a little bit further. And what we're going to the procurement stage now, where there's a number of bidders that are responding to those employers' information requirements. And what they can do is they can take that little export file, the little digital data file, and import it into their project area. And they can respond to that in terms of their capabilities. So I would do the task in the following way. I cannot do that particular task. I'd suggest the following deliverable. And against a particular project stage, the bidder can say which organisations they'd employ in terms of their supply chain that would fulfil those deliverables and those tasks. And what's fantastic there, in terms of the bidders and the client, is that's a standard data template for every single project. So you're not working for one client one day with a completely different process to the next and the next. And this is ABC client's BIM way, and then somebody else's BIM way. This is the way that aligns to the PAS 1192 central standards as pushed by BIM Task Group, UK government. So the proposed rules have been assigned now, and against each item, each task, each deliverable that the client has asked for, a stage and a response can be added. And just like before, that information can be exported into a nice user-friendly format for inclusion in a pre-contract BIM execution plan, and also into the digital format, which can go from one software platform into the next, or can loop through between different users using the BIM toolkit. And that cycle continues through the mobilization phase, and then into the design and construction phase. So through that production, through stages 2, 3, 4, 5 of the digital plan of work, This is when the federated project information model is beginning to grow. And what the digital plan of work's doing is defining the requirements, who is doing what and when. It's not some fancy 3D software that's in 6 months going to sort of take on all of the different 3D design packages. It's doing quite a simple job. It's an online tool that works on a standard data schema that allows people to define who is doing what and when with reference to all of the technical content that I'll come on to in a second. And that's going to allow clarity in terms of information exchanges between the supply chain and all ultimately filtering back to those original plain language questions that the employers in the employer's information requirements. So what we can see now is I've jumped from that strategy and brief stage into, I think this is stage 3 on the screen at the moment, and I've moved from the tasks tab, tasks like prepare the brief, do the feasibility study, which may be a Word document, a PowerPoint, a set of photographs, into deliverables. And deliverables are those digital representation of the physical. So a deliverable could be an auditorium, it could be a floor covering system, it could be a retaining wall. It's what's modelled that represents the physical. It's that digital information that people maybe associate more with building information modelling. And what you can see here is that there's a retaining wall system. The project team's now together, and that's the responsibility of the civil engineer, CCC Civil. And what you can see there is LOD and LOI. So just as it has in PAS 1192 Part 2, it's got the level of definition that's split into geometry, level of detail, the cube in Dave Phillips' washing machine example, and LOI, which is the information, which is the embedded information and associated information to that sort of geometry. And what you can do there is click on any of those little buttons. So you can see here for the retaining wall, it's LOD3, LOI2. Really important that they're split out. And those numbers are typical of the project stage, but don't necessarily have to be. And you can click on those buttons, and instead of having to go and enter a new username and password and download a PDF and jump to page 120 of the PDF, that information's at your fingertips. So you just click on that button, and you can see there what LOD 3, what that banding is, with a little bit of a guidance comment. And this is the fantastic technical content that Mott MacDonald for infrastructure and BDP for buildings has been developing. Really hard work over the last 6 months, which gives us a level of definitions library that's fit for the UK industry. Jump across to LOI, and what you can see there are bandings for that associated information. So maybe for the banding LOI 3 for a green roof, it might be talking about hydraulic performance, fire performance, structural performance. So don't think at this stage yet about particular products that make up the green roof, but think of that overall performance. And those bandings continue. To pick a different example, I'll jump across to maybe a service engineering example where I want to add a boiler. It's a classic example. There's always a door or a boiler, but here I'm adding a boiler to my digital plan of work. It asks what type of boiler. I'm going to pick a gas condensing boiler. And then at the next dialogue, it says, who's responsible for it? So again, trying to make BIM really sort of user-friendly and accessible for the entire industry, not just the BIM experts. So you get a little drop-down value and you pick that role, building service engineer, wires and fires. Add a little description. That could be the brief for that particular item going into that stage. And then you pick from the bandings. And what you can see there, LOD2, which is basically just a cube, but a cube that does have an access and maintenance zone around it. So even at that early stage, just as it says in the government soft landings guidelines, getting a soft landing champion on to think about the outcomes and the in-use period, even though the design is just a cube. But then as you move down those bandings, being able to see that sort of something that looks a bit more like a boiler, if that's what's needed by the design team or the project team, at LOD5. Jumping across to LOI again, you can see that early stage, just give me a description of the boiler, that's all I like. Let's not try and cram too much information early on, if that's the banding you choose here. But then as those bandings develop, here at LOI 6, which is the handover, again thinking about the requirements of the operators of the asset, here's all of the standard COBie properties. There's a bit of discussion this morning about COBie, and I always feel it gets sort of driven towards COBie as Microsoft Excel, more than COBie, the data schema, but there's some really solid standard properties in COBie. And this is COBie, the data schema, the digital information. And there's those properties for LOI 6. It's really important to say it's not just about buildings. So we've got hundreds of LOD guidance bandings, sort of definition guides, and also thousands of LOI bands that go across the entire infrastructure sector. So not just buildings, but here's an example. It's one of my favourites for airport jet blast deflection systems. I love that one. Just a few examples just to put on the screen. We've got rail, we've got highways, water, waste. There's a bridge deck. Here's another one of my favourites, the wastewater scum removal. They had scum removal systems in my old high school, but it wasn't fun. I survived. I think we've also got a bottom scraping device, which is another one I love. But these fantastic array of sort of LOD and LOI guidance, reference definitions, that can be used when you're putting that digital plan of work together. Moving on to classification a little bit, UniClass 2015 is the unified classification system that's it's going live at the moment. And what we've done there, in addition to all of the feedback that's came in from industry to the groups like CPIC over the last 3 or 4 years, which have been taken on board and incorporated, we've also developed a mapping strategy inside of our content management system. So you can see there we've got mappings to the MBS specification codes, and also mappings to the RICS NRM1 stroke NRM3 codes. So for example here, solar heating system, I can't make it on the screen, but jumps across to 5.5.3 heat sources in NRM1. And for those cost consultants out there that are members of iServe, you can click on that button and jump across to the NRM guidance documents at the right place. So you've got a digital object that represents the physical with its unified classification clause, but through sort of clever database behind the scenes, those that need that information can, again, a single click and jump up there and go across to the information offerings from Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. There's a link also to the BCIS guidance for benchmarking, etc. In terms of those property and stage, the project properties and stage properties, we've also aligned those working with RICS as a partner. So as more and more information goes in, like from a private client's point of view, then they're not putting information into a completely new data structure to what they've done over the last 30 or 40 years with systems such as standard form of cost analysis, BCIS. And one of the biggest complaints about classification over the last 3 or 4 years in terms of engaging with the industry is terminology. And I've been in rooms where people have argued about this. Do you call it a tap or a water supply fitting? Do you call it a floor covering or a carpet? And people can argue and argue and argue. So what we've done is we've just built in synonyms into the database and the search technology. And these are synonyms that have been generated from MBS technical documents, but also synonyms that we can explicitly add in and build on over time. So an example there could be, instead of, do you call something a burglar alarm or an intruder detection alarm system? The search engine will sort that out for you. And at MBS, we try to use the technical language from the standards, but I'll give some examples on that later. There's a number of classification tables. I've searched for classroom, and on the left-hand side, it's asking me in the filter. It's most likely that you're searching for a space type, but you might be searching for a system, classroom furniture, or a product, maybe a whiteboard or something. And you can quickly filter that and say, I'm interested in space tables, and there's your items from the space tables. Early stage design, you're maybe thinking more of spaces than you are elements or systems or products. UniClass 2015 in one slide is based on the international standard ISO 12006 Part 2 framework, which is unified between buildings and infrastructures. It's a coherent set of tables that's built for BIM, and it's got tables for complexes, entities, activities and spaces, elements, systems and products. If you imagine a sort of big Russian doll that you keep on taking the top off and getting smaller and smaller. So last couple of slides off myself here. This is the end of that sort of digital journey where on a particular project where you've started strategy at brief stage. It's gone all the way through design and construction, but ultimately this is what the asset manager wants. They want to be able to go to an asset in the building that needs to be maintained, such as a boiler or a chiller or a road that needs cleaned and gritted. They need to be able to click on that and get the digital information that's been asked for at handover. So you know straight away that this particular boiler is in a particular space, on a particular level of a building, what its manufacturer is, its model, its expected life, what its maintenance manual is, which probably is just a PDF. And if we can sort of get that data to that stage, make Kobe happen in the background and not get too worried about Microsoft Excel, then that's the sort of ultimate goal of where we want to be. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Professor Steve Lockley from BIM Academy to talk a little bit about verification, validation, and BIM submissions. Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Just a slight observation as somebody who's on the other side of the fence looking at it from the sort of BIM users, the amount of data and work that these guys have put in is quite phenomenal. I think if you get a chance to have a look at this in the next few weeks, you'll get some kind of insight. It's a good piece of work. What I'm going to try and roughly do is try and explain how we glue this together with what you were doing out there with your current technologies. Steve mentioned we're more on the R&D side of things, so the stuff that I'm showing you now is on beta, and it's still a research prototype, but it's going to be quickly formalised in the next few months. As Steve mentioned, it's funded by Innovate UK, which is the UK Technology Strategy Board. And we have built this in the spirit of openness. It's built on the XBIM platform, which is an open BIM software platform that the BIM Academy has developed and, working with industry, put out there over the last 4 or 5 years. It's open source, so people can engage with it. And there's a team of people coming from all sectors of industry who are now working on this. So I'm presenting not just my work, but a lot of other people's work who've engaged in trying to make this happen. Everything we've done is built firmly on the Building Smart Data Model, or the IFC, if you're as old as I am and you can remember that. Apparently it's been renamed now to the Building Smart Data Model. And it's all community-based and royalty-free, so this is something for the industry. It's not a commercial product. The people on the right-hand side are those who have engaged with us and who are working with us now to make this technology available to us all. So our objectives in this phase that we did for validation and verification was really to close the loop in the information handling process. So, we talk about information requirements, but how often do you actually see anybody in the design team who are developing their design actually going back constantly to the information requirements? It's something we do, and quite often put it in the boot of the car and carry on. Once you've done your development of your design, you need to test the information you've created to see if it is actually meeting the requirements that you were asked to deliver in the first place. And I'm sure many of you will have had moments where you've submitted designs and the space provision hasn't met what the client originally asked for, or something changed in the specification in the process as you went through the design process and it wasn't what the client really wanted. So this sort of review and submission process, this is not a big cycle, this is happening all the time in lots of little cycles as we go through the process. And where our focus really has been on, can we validate that what is going around this circle is actually the right thing? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we handle information submission and how we handle validation. The goal is to automate this because we don't want to be manually handling all this information. So we've been, from the very start, designing this to be an automated system. And we want to minimize error in translation. We don't want data loss, we don't want things getting misrepresented. And as I said earlier, we have to base this on the IFC, and it has to be Kobe compliant to meet with BS 1192, the PAS 1192. We also had challenges with an entirely new classification system, which is based on an old one but is significantly different and larger. And we have to make something that isn't stuck in time. So one of the problems we've had in the past is we create systems and structures of data and they atrophy. They just become redundant because the technologies in terms of the building elements and fabrics that we're working with are all moving on. We've got new materials, new technologies, we have to have something that isn't atrophied and does allow us to innovate and do new things with the building elements that we're working with. So, just to lower expectations now right down, that's the true art of a salesman, I'm told. You have to verify that our approach to verifying the data in this particular scope, this phase, is just to check whether it's there or not. Not to check whether it's the correct data or that the values that I've submitted to you are going to do the job, because that requires professional judgment, that requires your skill set. All we're trying to achieve at the moment is that you have submitted a data set that has got information in that can be validated. You've met the requirement to give me data. And believe you me, that's a major thing, and it's very difficult for people to do, and I don't think many of us are doing it now. We've had to integrate with the work that Steve's done, which has been no problem whatsoever. Had to work across all timelines. A lot of the stuff that you've heard about COBie has been focusing on handover of the building. This is COBie at all stages in the timeline, from feasibility right the way through to demolition. And COBie can handle that, and we've been working on how we make that work. And we've had to work within this structure that Steve has already explained to you. So, I've put here we're 110% COBie compliant. That means we comply with COBie, but what we've added to COBie is the dimension of time and project stages as we move through time. And at all times we've taken the approach that IFC and COBie are interchangeable. You can move between one or the other without loss of information, and that's how the system is designed. And what we've done is we've divided the way we exchange information into these three different types. So in the bottom here, you've got what everybody recognises as COBie, the multicoloured spreadsheet. We have that, and we can work with it. We use it as an exchange medium. But above there, we have a human view of how COBie is. So you can see COBie has this spreadsheet form, but actually, if you're just looking at it as a data structure, it's all about spaces, assets, systems, zones, and people. So this is the human interface which we've provided for people to work with. And then over the left now, we've developed a computer-readable version of COBie that makes it much easier to handle in automation of software. And we're hoping this will be used by the BIM vendors and other solution providers to integrate better with their systems. So this is the circle. Define, develop, submit, validate, accept. And of course, you can see there we're going both ways around. Well, we start with define, come this way, but equally, when you get to validate, you've got to be taking in what was the original definition from the start of the cycle. What I'm very quickly going to do is just go around this loop and explain how the toolkit works. So in the definition phase, that's really simple. You start in the BIM toolkit online, and in the top right-hand corner, you can see export. That gives you your requirements files as you've defined them in the environment that Steve just described. We come into here, and these are the two formats that come out of there, in COBie and in IFC. And this will just simply say, what do I as a client want? So here you can see, I want a building called Lakeside Restaurant, and it's a dining complex. We put that information out, there's more in there, and obviously underneath there's the floors, the spaces, all the things that you might wish to put in. We put it out as IFC, so that you can take that requirement into any of the BIM tools, because they all read IFC 2x3, and you can bring that data in. And in the top right-hand corner, you can see how that data would come into something like Solibri. It's just coming in as blocks, because we haven't designed a building yet. We've just got something. But each one of the little blocks has got a whole pile of properties and data, and you can use the normal tools you've got to look at what the client has asked you to deliver. You take those requirements, bring them into your BIM tools, and you start doing a development. We are completely BIM platform neutral, so we're using IFC to bring the data in. You work in your tool of choice, and you populate the BIM model with the data you've been asked to give. So there's some discussion at the moment, and we're working with the various BIM vendors to work out the most efficient way of doing that, but it's not a massively complex task. Once you've done that, you can export it from your BIM tool using the normal IFC export, or if the BIM tool supports it, the normal COBie export. We provide the tools to convert IFC to COBie if you haven't got that. So that's going to be part of the BIM toolkit. It's a service that you can use, and it will give you the COBie files straight from an IFC file. And here you might then see something like this, where my proposal for this dining space is to give you these 7 zones with these spacers. For those of you who are unfamiliar with COBie, it's just literally a sort of pseudo database format. And along the bottom you'll have your systems, your components, your types, all of the other information that you are wanting to submit to the client for their acceptance. We've then provided a range of tools that allow you, before you submit it to the client, to look at what you've got and validate it against the requirements that you defined in the first place. So these tools include an online viewing tool. So this is a free-to-use online viewer which will handle most of the BIM models that you're working with. We've put quite a lot of effort into developing that viewing technology. On the left-hand side there, you can see the simple human structure. So here are the asset types. I select any of the asset types and I highlight them in my BIM tool automatically so I can see where they are. And on the right-hand side, I've got the various properties and information that I've been providing for those tools. So very simple, easy to review as we work through the process. And equally, we can validate it. So you can see on the left the 3 stages: delivered, required, validated. So you'll get the same view for each of those phases, and you can work out what you have done as passed and what you have done as failed. From that, we get the COBie submission or the IFC submission, and we get the COBie requirements from the first phase, and we perform a validation. So here's a typical COBie requirements file, and this is the computer readable version of COBie. You can see it's quite structured, it's not a spreadsheet, things are very clear. So I care about a dining area and I want a usable height of 30 metres. Well, it's probably feet because it's an American model. Those 2 are input into your validate process, and now you can see the same structure. On the left hand side I see which of the objects I've submitted have passed and failed, and on the right hand side I can easily see which properties I've failed to provide and I need to go back into my BIM tool and populate with valid data. This saves you having hassle with clients because you can make sure you're giving them the right information. It makes people look more professional. This is an online tool again, which we're providing free as part of the toolkit. We also have, for the new PAS 92 Part 5 requirements, an in-house version that you can run locally. So if you're the military or the Ministry of Justice, you can run it without going on the web and sharing your data with other people. So we've developed a similar viewer to do exactly the same thing, but not in a cloud-based environment. So again, those 2 tools are available to people. And finally, you submit that to the BIM toolkit. So you submit your proposals, and it gives you a very simple, or the client, a very simple report that tells you the state of that project. So what you can see here is the validation report. I asked for these 6 things in my project. They were found, they were matched, not always against the same classification system. We're not forcing people to use any classification system. We can look up things and match them, and we do that as part of the tool. And on the right-hand side it says, well, you submitted 8 of these, 2 of them passed. You submitted 6 of these, all 6 of them passed. So top-level overview, you can immediately see where your problems are. And then for each of the failures, you'll get a page which lists the assets that you've submitted and shows which properties you were asked to give, which you did give and which you didn't give. And if you've got it right, there's no problem. The client will accept it and sign off your fee. If you've got it wrong, you've got to go back to your BIM tool and put the data in and go around the loop again. So essentially, that is the simple process we're trying to emulate. You have a range of tools there that are all free to use. They will be going live within the next few weeks, and there's going to be, I believe, a beta program for people to engage and try them out and use them, which will start in about a couple of weeks' time, I think. So finally, this is just a little plea from me. We are a community trying to work for your benefit, And it is an open platform, it's royalty free. We currently have quite a few organisations who are engaged with us. We work very closely with 4 projects who use our technology in their platforms for their 4BIM product. And these are just some of the companies we're working with. We are very amenable to working with people who want to move their tools on to more advanced BIM platforms. And if you want any more information about what we do, they're the 2 web addresses, openbim.org, and all of our software and all of the stuff you've seen here today is freely available on the web under the XBIM team on GitHub. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi, thank you very much, Steve. Just to summarise, what we've seen today, Dave Philp opened up and talked about the clear, simple strategy. There's level 2 BIM around a standard digitalised process and around a construction process that's not just around the physical asset but also the digital asset. I presented the free to use digital plan of work tool that has been built to support that level 2 BIM process. And I think just one thing just to stress there is what I said at the start. We didn't set out, the level 2 BIM program didn't set out to produce something that only 2% of the industry could understand. It's about producing something that 90% of the industry can understand, if not higher. And that digital plan of work tool is a simple online tool that puts together a matrix saying who is doing what and when, looks at tasks as well as deliverables. And that's what I really hope that when you get a chance to have a look at this tool, you'll agree that we've achieved. And then what we've seen is maybe some more of the advanced BIM technology stuff that Professor Steve Lockley's shown in terms of verifying that digital information because it's to a well-structured open data format. So we've got the toolkit now. It's going to go through a sort of public beta process over the next 8, 9, 10 weeks. That takes us through to the June date, which is when we're trying to wrap up that level 2 BIM package. So I think it's live. I think it's live now. Please try it out. Please be understanding with us over the next couple of months as we sort of iron out any glitches. I know I've worked alongside a lot of people that are in the audience over the last 4 or 5 years as part of the UK BIM community, and I really look forward to you having a look at it and giving us feedback and things. And it should be an interesting next couple of months as we take it from public beta and then say, look, yeah, this is now part of a world-class set of standards and tools that puts UK BIM at a real position of leadership across the world. So I'd just like to thank again Dave Philp and Steve Lockley for support with the presentation. And we've got maybe 3 or 4 minutes of time for some questions. Thank you very much.